Ohio gozaimasu, everyone. Um, it's been about a week since the last tutorial. We were going on about Glenn Vilppu's drawing method. We were up to chapter 2, and today we'll get into chapter 3, where he gets into the importance of box forms. And I think I mentioned that in the last video. If you talk to many some of the best artists, especially comic book and animating artists, they say how important it is to practice just drawing cubes, because what we learned last week was the sphere, today the cube, and you can pretty much combining those shapes create most things you see out there, like dumb things down to those basic forms. Okay, I don't want to make it like too long a video like I usually have been. So today I'll try to keep it short, and I'll try to keep out the non-necessary commentary. So yeah, okay, boxes. He's saying that you should really spend a lot of time just sketching out these box shapes like so. Just when you're doodling around sometime, just spend time doing one of these 3D boxes. Well, not one of them, just do a bunch of them. And this gets you into the habit of seeing forms in space. Try to draw through the form as well. Didn't do it here. And it also helps you simplify objects. So if you've got the rib cage, if you can see on my screen there, if you've got the rib cage like that, the rib cage it can be represented as a box like so, because believe it or not, your rib cage has a side plate under your armpits. Okay, so being able to identify this box shape of the rib cage is important in drawing the figure. Also, trying to identify the pelvis as a shoebox shape. Remember, we spoke about the pelvis last week. So this could represent a rib cage. And then you've got a pelvis over here. Remember the belt line on your body? That's where you find the iliac crests of the pelvis. This should resemble your pelvis somewhat. Okay, so what he says especially is not only practice drawing the boxes, but also practice what they call tumbling boxes. So I'll draw this cube up here like so, and then pretend remember to draw through, and try to get into the habit of animating this box to move in space. So I'm turning it a little bit to the right. It went from there and moved out a bit. Okay, so actually it didn't move too much, did it? I'll try it again. See, it's a difficult task just trying to even draw a box. Okay, so if it's turning that way, I'll see less of this face, and I'll see more of this face. Okay, so as an exercise, try and do many of those cubes just falling in space. If I want this to fall forward like so, I have to start thinking. I'll see less of this side. I'll see more of the top. And when I said it was coming this way, it's coming off the ground. So it should be coming off the ground up here. So it's tumbling towards me. So spend a lot of time doing those boxes, tumbling boxes, just rotating them in space. And I'll also, when we're getting into these forms, like especially cubes, maybe it helps to understand a little bit about perspective. So say we've got what we call a horizon line, which is where the point in a image where the sky meets the land, okay? And if we wanted to make a cube in this setting, and there was a 1 point perspective cube, there'd be 1 point on the this horizon line, and we have the points, the edges of this cube meeting up at that point. And if I was drawing through, it would be like so. Now with 2 point perspective, I'll show you why we're learning this in a sec, but we've got the same deal, a horizon line, and say we've got 2 points. In 2 point perspective, you see the two sides of the cube now. The sides of the cubes converging to these vanishing points. And the vanishing point is where the sides of the cube would meet if it continued onto the horizon. Okay? Now, the point of this, okay, remember, look at these side edges. They're converging, so they're closing in on that vanishing point. They're not sort of going parallel. They're converging. That's converge, and these are parallel. So if you look at cubes that you'll be drawing, it's important to remember this. When you draw a cube, this cube is convincing, but not as convincing as converging. See, 1, 2, 3. I've got that 1 there. This will angle in a bit more than what we had over here on the left box. So, and then this outside edge will converge at a bit of a tighter angle than what we had on the left again. Now, do you see the difference between these two boxes? The one on the right is converging, so see, these lines are going and meeting at a point, whereas these ones are not meeting, they're just parallel. They just keep going parallel forever. Now, when we're drawing, it's good to get into the habit of converging the sides of your box to give the illusion and emphasize that that cube is going away in space. So get into the habit of converging these outer lines to meet the center edge. Hopefully that's making some sense. I think I'm going a bit too slowly. So we'll get on to the next exercise that he talks about, and it is rounding off these tumbling boxes. So the rounded boxes. So the same deal as before. Just, oh geez, I did this really wrong. Okay, this cube. Remember now we're trying to converge the lines of the box to me. So I'm converging these lines here. Now we're going to, he wants you to round off these boxes. And I think the point of that is just to get into the habit of not making such sharp edges, but I don't mind these sharp edges to represent the rib cage. It sort of really pushes the fact of the plane change. But if we're going to go along with his book, he's talking about doing an exercise of rounding off boxes. So just give them a sort of curved, rounded edge. And he says in this part of the book to start playing with that rounded form. So see if you can get it to twist a little bit. I'm going to try and get, wherever we also went through squash and stretch last week, try and incorporate it into some of your examples. So there's one there. And he's saying just have fun with making these organic box shapes, rounded box shapes. So I'm extending one edge of it there. And yeah, you can get carried away doing that. So that's one of the other exercises. So far we've got drawing cubes and make sure that they converge to push that perspective. We're also drawing tumbling cubes. Remember, cubes, the same cube revolved, the tumbling, and now I've also got this exercise of making rounded boxes and treating it like putty, bending it into different orientations. So give that a go. And the reason he's got a page here saying why it's so important to be good at drawing boxes. So I've got the note here where you can simplify parts of the body into these box shapes, like we've said a million times about the pubic area. It's like a shoebox, the rib cage, a big rectangular box. But if you get good at drawing these boxes in perspective, you can pretty much draw anything, any form there is out there. And the boxy shape can be used to represent buildings, cars. So the reason I say this is because I remember when I started drawing, say if I wanted to draw a car, I'd probably start at the headlight and just move out and keep on going. But these really good artists will break things down into these very simple shapes, construct things out of these shapes like Lego, And then you have fun. The cherry on top is just, you've got everything in place, these simple shapes in place, and then you just start adding details. And the habit before drawing anything is to go into the simplified forms, the big simplified forms first. So if you're drawing the head, you're not going to start by drawing a nostril and working out from there. If you want to, you can try, but it's a lot easier to do it this other way. We'll get on to, the box as a torso, the torso as a box. So what I want to bring up here is, not only can you represent the rib cage as a boxy shape, and also the pelvic area, you can do that for the limbs too. So the upper limb, wedging into the lower forearm, the hand, the big palm area of the hand can be a boxy shape. Everything you can represent, the leg, knees, okay, lower leg. There's a tapering box shape with tapering, especially with the forearm up here. Let's say I've got this forearm. It's a wide shape, and then it tapers to the thin wrist. So you can see this mannequin I've created just from boxes. Okay, and then the reason we like these planes is if you wanted to shade it, you have a definite plane that you can identify. For where to shade it. And after that's done, you can start adding details. So say you've got the muscle of this leg, and there's another central big quad muscle. Just start chipping away at this, or adding to these shapes. Okay, so he's got several pages of where he represents the body as a cubic sort of shape, like what I've done here. Another important thing is to try and identify, for me when I started, and I think many people, when instructors would say, oh, look for the rib boxy shape, I'd be like looking at the body and thinking, how do I see a boxy shape under all that skin and flesh? So we'll use some, let's see if I've got an image here. So we can maybe use a reference like, maybe we can see that a little bit. Now the edges of, okay, so if I represent this rib cage, I would see it, it's leaning, it's got it like that. Okay, so you go to yourself when you're beginning, you go, I don't see any box shape here. So I'll try and help you identify that. There's a plane, okay, just let me add one more. Okay, so there we go. Up here on your shoulder, there's the ball joint of your humerus, of your arm, and sort of sits in a area. So you've got the clavicle on top of the ribs, meaning at the point above that ball of the humerus head, and then you've got the scapula of the back coming. You've got I think it's called an acromion process up here. So I'll draw it out. The shoulder blade has this hanging sort of, I think it's a cantilever, is it called? I don't know. This is the collarbone, and then underneath all that is the humerus head here. Okay, so what was the point of that? Yep. So this point here, this AC joint, acromion process, I think, hopefully that's what it is. This area here would be one side of this rib cage. So I'll say it is the middle of that top plane. And then you imagine seeing it through there, but we can't see through there. All right. What's another hint? See the belly button here? Just above it is where you've got the edges of the rib cage. And how do you see the edges of the rib cage? It's hard to see, but I'm looking at the belly button, and just above it, I can identify this from my experience of looking at so many of these figures, that I'll look at this little shade underneath the first set of abs, and that tells me that there's a crevice, or not a crevice, but a dip under the rib cage. So that's what we're identifying. So the rib cage would be represented like so, and it doesn't have to be exactly in place, but I could see that my version was pretty close out here. Okay, let's try and identify it on another one here. So okay, one went, oh, here we go. Let me erase all this. Okay, I'm looking at this figure here. I know he's leaning forward, he or she. And here's the belly button. Just above it, you can see this shade, and to me that represents the corner of one of the rib cages. Okay, so far I've got that. Now I feel this rib cage is roughly this wide. I can't see through this to the acromion process, but I know it's in the area of where this ball of the head of the humerus is. And from observing this figure, you can see that they're lifting that ball and moving it a bit forward. So the acromion process, if we look through, would be around that spot, and the other side would be there for this image around there. Okay, so we've got our rib cage. How do we identify the pelvis? So I think from last time we mentioned how we were looking for the belt line, and you can see on this pretty easy, there's a shadow there, and if we go all the way around, it meets on the other side of that shoebox over there. So, and the shoebox, I believe, would be leaning forward like the rest of his body. Okay. So these studies you really should be doing often. In between was the belly button. And just get into the habit of connecting the rib to the torso, to the shoebox shape of the pelvis. Okay? Let's try this one here. He's leaning, okay, head of the humerus. So roughly here's where the humerus connects with the acromion process. Now we're seeing the top plane of that rib fall, okay? Now, I feel that you've got the belly button here. Just above it is an edge of a rib cage. So, and I feel it. I can see a bit of this side plane of that cube of his rib cage area. So this is how I'm representing that. And it's called the edge of the bottom of the ribs would be the 10th rib. So I'll try to copy it here so you see how they relate. Now, I can see on this picture this form of the crest of the pubis, and it would be sitting under this rib cage box shape, like so. Where is the bottom of the shoebox shape? It would be around the area of the bottom of the crotch. And it's a bit straighter, like, here we go. This is what it sort of looked like. Okay. Now that's pretty much it for this. Well, it was pretty quick tutorial by my standards, but that is pretty much it. We'll go through this example again because just a bonus, eh? As a bonus. Well, how do I move this? Okay, but never mind. Okay, so I'm identifying. Oh, we did this one, didn't we? But we'll go through it again. This is what I'm seeing as the rib cage. And if you feel it doesn't look right, just start again and see if you can make it look right. Here's follow that all the way around. So you've got an oblique sitting on the iliac crest there. And so he's really twisting. Okay, in the center of the shoebox shape, the center of the rib cage, connect them, and his body is twisting like so. Okay, and the front of that rib to the front box here. If I look through the back the back of the pubis area to that other rib shape. This one, this to this here. So that would probably have a overlapping squash shape like this. Oops, back. Okay. So this is, I'll leave you with that for today. So you are doing cube box shapes and you're representing the rib cage and pelvis. But if you want to challenge yourself, start also representing the limbs as boxy shapes. Okay. Now, the limbs are kind of like what the Americans call 2x4s. So you have a thinner side and one side would be a bit wider. So for example, with the bicep I see on this fellow, if it was a spherical shape, it would be like that, connecting to the head of the humerus. Or if I wanted to make it a cubic shape, you just start practicing making these, this cubic boxy kind of shapes to represent limbs. And remember, the calf, lower leg, and the forearm can be represented with these 2x4s, but you can add a bit of meat to these forearms. So this is getting a bit more technical now, but we'll get into it another time. So just get into the habit of looking at the figure at life drawing or wherever online resources and converting, focusing only on the rib cage and the pelvic girdle. Okay, and just hammering out a lot of those studies and connecting the top to the bottom, i.e. the pelvis to the rib cage. Okay, so I'll leave you with that. Next week we'll get into combining the spheres and the boxes. And until then, keep practicing. Do more practice than you are actual theory or study, or book study. Just doing is much more important than just watching. So take care. See you later.